All right, so we are live here with another episode of the Rob Anderson Show. I know it's been a while, but I'm very honored to have on my next guest here today with me, Dr. Mike Coulas, who has a chiropractic and wellness center in Whitby, Ontario. So it's called Awakened Life Chiropractic and Wellness Center. And Mike, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me.
Doing great, man. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yeah. And so the way Mike and I met, we actually met through a friend, Carl, and so we've been chatting a little bit here and there the past few weeks. So I know you a little bit, but this is going to be our first one-on-one interview, and I'm really excited because just from the conversations we've had, like I was like, the first day I met you, I was like, oh man, I got to talk to this guy. So Mike, just tell me a little bit about you. You've been doing chiropractic for 25 years. Was that your only profession, or was it something that did you get in right out of high school? How did you come to go down that path in life?
Well, when I was in high school, you're kind of looking, what you wanted to do. And I was always interested in, sports and fitness. And I was also, health sciences and things like that. So I was interested in, creating a strong physical body so I could compete in sports really well. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to be maybe a doctor or a phys ed teacher. And those were kind of my two options. And the other option was I wanted to play maybe high-level competitive sports for a while first. So I was playing lots of physical sports, and I did pretty well in school. But I also excelled quite well in sports. A lot of the sports I played were very physical. It was kind of interesting because in high school, my nickname was Killer Coulas. And I would put like a crush on people when I played football or rugby. I was even a pretty rough basketball player and things like that. So even though these were like, sports where there's not supposed to be a lot of contact, I was a pretty rough and tumbled guy. And it was through an injury through rugby where I went to tackle this guy and his knee caught me right in the jaw, twisted my head around, knocked me unconscious for 45 minutes. And I was out cold for a long time. I was coming back. I was kind of just shaking when I went to the hospital. They got me revived and everything, but I had amnesia. I had a bad concussion, obviously, and then I had lost some of my memory, which is quite interesting. I didn't really know where it went, but I had this like whole tingling over my body. I wasn't really feeling that well, but they didn't really treat the concussion even as seriously as they do now. But over the next few weeks, less than a month, I was starting to lose weight. I still had that tingling in my body. I just knew I wasn't doing well. And a guy from my football team said, you should probably, these doctors can't figure out what's going on. Why don't you go see a chiropractor? And I was like, a chiropractor? Like, what's a chiropractor? I don't know why I need to go. And I wasn't really sure what they did. But I did, on his advice, go to see a chiropractor. And right away, they did a health history. They analyzed my spine. They felt some bones misaligned in my neck. And, after all the workup, they decided we should do some adjustments. So I agreed to get some adjustments. And as soon as they adjusted my neck, that tingling went away. As soon as that first crack happened, I could feel the energy come back to my body. And it was like, wow, this is a whole nother level of like enlightenment. I just felt the pressure come off and I felt energy come back to my body. And I'm like, I just started studying chiropractic. I said, you know what? I think we need to know more about this. And from that point on, I pretty well had decided I'm just going to become a chiropractor. This was something the world needed more of, a natural way to heal the body and this innate intelligence to allow your body to heal and regenerate at its high level. So I said, okay. I started in high school. I did my final year project on chiropractic. I brought a chiropractor into the classroom. We all talked about the chiropractic stuff. And I said, okay. And I just kept applying to, learn about more what it would take to get into chiropractic college, which I went on to University of York, did kinesiology. And the whole way through, I knew I was going to become a chiropractor.
That's awesome. And it's interesting, because when I heard your story, I just kind of loved it. And it clicked with me because I've had a lot of injuries that I think probably I should have went to the chiropractor for, that I just never knew, or nobody ever suggested it, or that so like in a way, it's great that that happened so early on in your life and that you saw the power of it, because I think that spinal alignment in general is just huge to our overall health. And now more so than ever, about, I think it was probably 6 years ago, I had a really bad lower spine injury from working out. And I was at the time, I was like, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go to doctors. I was averse to doctors, not chiropractors necessarily, but I had buddies who had similar injury, and they went to the doctors, and like the doctors are like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to fuse your discs and this and that. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going down that road. And after months of like hardly sleeping and, tossing and turning at night, and like like your quality of life is just horrible when you have a back injury like that, a lower back injury. And then, yeah, I started doing my brother and my friend's recommendation, doing yoga. And I did it in the comfort of my own home. And yoga with Adrian. So if anybody's wants to do yoga, check out Yoga with Adrian. And it's a 30-day program, and I did it 60 days in a row, followed that. And then by that time, I kind of knew enough to keep doing my own regimen. And yeah, now I do yoga probably 5 days a week, at least. And I think that it's very vital to, and there was never an importance. So how, like, would you say from, you've been doing it quite some time, would you say, what's kind of like, has the world opened up to it more? Because I know that I was reading a book, and I think it was like Warren Buffett's Charlie Munger, and they like, chiropractic when it first, back in the day, it wasn't considered like an essential thing. Like I remember him saying like, oh yeah, chiropractors were the great boobs of the medical profession. I was like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about and how beneficial it can be, because so how would you say that it's changed over the years, and especially with like public reception to it?
You know what? When I was introduced to it, and this was in the 80s, I was like, why doesn't everybody everybody should know about this? This is like a secret to getting optimally healthy. You have to have energy from your brain getting through your spine out to all your body parts to be optimally healthy. If you're blocking some of that energy flow, I'm like, wow, this is going to take off. I said, I was like, this profession is going to be like massive. It's going to be so easy for me to like, be really successful in this. So what I found is, like everything else in this world, if you get into something really like natural and healthy, and you're motivating people to like take the power back to themselves, where you've got the power. So like one of the concepts of chiropractic is the power that made the body heals the body, and we just need to get rid of that interference, right? Mm-hmm. So you're kind of giving the power back to the patient to say, you can heal your body. We just need to like, get rid of the blocked nerves or the misalignments, or improve your posture, or get you stretching and exercising, or a combination of all that. But what we're finding is that a lot of these professions are being suppressed. And what I found was, even into the 1980s, there was there was laws where medical doctors were not allowed to associate with chiropractors. They were not allowed to refer to chiropractors. The American Medical Association ended up getting sued by a small group of chiropractors because they were putting out propaganda or false information about chiropractors, trying to dissuade people from going to chiropractors. So there's been a lot of like false information try to scare people away from getting adjusted. It might, cause a stroke, or, cause more damage, and all these things. So ultimately, the profession has grown slowly by grassroots people that actually feel the benefit of it, and then they know that maybe they'll refer their friends. But there hasn't been a real huge public campaign, and not a lot of cooperation from medical doctors, and pharmaceutical companies obviously don't want you to be going to the chiropractor. So there's been a lot of dissuasion from these other professions for people to go to chiropractors. Because you know what, if you're healthy, you don't need the drugs, you don't need all these things. And these pharmaceutical companies, they fund the World Health Organization, they fund medical schools, they indoctrinate the people what they're supposed to know. And anyways, I'm so blessed to actually have gotten the benefit of chiropractic myself. And then what I found is that it's actually part of my awakening story too, because then you start seeing the corruption in these other systems. And then it opens your eyes to say, what else might be corrupt out there? So overall, I've done well with chiropractic because I know it's helped me. I've got a strong knowing, a strong belief that I can help a lot of other people. But, you know, I don't really push hard to convince them. The people that want to come to me, they come to me, and the people that get the benefit of it, they stick with it and they tell their friends and family. And so it's grown naturally, and I really enjoy what I do.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible. And like, to be honest, I've never gone even to a chiropractor. The only time I've had any adjustments done is I had a girlfriend in university who was going to be one. So she did some on me back in the day. But I might have to come visit you one of these days, because I've been working overtime. Like even recently, like you just don't know. I've been doing yoga religiously, and albeit I think, I did a focus for my core and my lower back. And I didn't realize how much I had going on between my shoulder blades. Like even recently, up until a few weeks ago, where I was doing some deep breathing and I was stretching, and I just felt like in between my shoulders. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even know there was a problem there. Like that's just been out of alignment for, I guess almost 39 years. I don't remember, but I've had a lot of injuries from sports and things like that probably just healed incorrectly. And it was about, I guess it was, trying to figure the timeline. It feels like a time warp since we've been through COVID. But so in 2019, I guess, I was moving, and my brother-in-law, we were lifting this like really heavy unit up the stairs, and he kind of like let go and it slipped and fell back down, and like it jammed my arm into the wall. So I had something going on my neck and shoulder and back and whatever. And like, it was like 6 months of like, oh my God. And I'm trying to do yoga and it's not working. But it takes so long to heal these injuries, some of these injuries, and you don't even know what you're doing. And I'm kind of, maybe I'm stubborn and I should have gone to a chiropractor or a doctor, but I read this really interesting thing, and it was a gentleman, I think it was in a book. I can't remember. I read so much stuff. I don't remember which, if it was which publication or book it was in, but he was talking about how a lot of times with spinal injuries or just injuries in general, that when they happen when we're young, that they heal out of, like, you heal out of alignment, right? So then you've built up this like muscular thing to hold it. Like you think it's okay, but it's not, it's healed incorrectly, right? And so his suggestion was, instead, because at the time I was doing, I wasn't doing heavy weights, I was doing moderate weights, but his suggestion was stop doing weights for like 6 months to a year and just do yoga and see what that does. Because you might be compounding injuries or covering them up, right? And so I did that, and that's when I started making real progress, where I was like getting opened up in parts that I didn't even know that were, probably too tense. So what would you say to somebody who's had like a sports injury or something, like how, like in the benefits of chiropractic? Like, I mean, your story was amazing because it was an instant feel. And have you seen a lot of that with your patients?
I would say the majority, it's more of a process of change, although there may be some instant relief when you get an adjustment, but it does tend to go back to the old pattern, especially if that pattern has been in your body for a long time. Your body does have a memory. The ligaments and muscles have actually stretched and changed to hold your spine in that misaligned pattern that it's been in for so long. And you kind of get away with it where you don't really feel it, even if it did, the vertebrae did shift and maybe it did pinch a nerve. That sensory nerve, there's only about 10% of the fibers are sensory fibers. You'll actually kill down those sensory fibers to the point where you don't even feel it anymore, but you may be blocking energy to an area that you don't even realize. And it could lead to an area of dis-ease or pathology later in your life that you didn't realize. And most of these nerves are going to things you don't feel. They're going to your organs in your body, your heart, your lungs, your immune system, your digestive system, your reproductive system, all these other systems, which most people that come into a chiropractor, they're coming in because they're in pain originally. And that pain is a great motivator, but the pain is not really the most important thing. The pain is just telling you there's a problem that has just kind of come on more acutely. And then over time, it'll kind of, your body just gets used to it. So most people would be benefiting getting their spine periodically checked throughout their whole life, so they don't end up with these significant misalignments, and they don't build up a pattern where they hold it out of position for a long time.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, right? Because like, you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, as I've healing the past few years, it was like, man, like I just didn't even know I was that out of alignment. And now I can almost I guess subconsciously, yeah. I can tell when I'm sitting, like when my spine's out of alignment, and I'm sure I still have some work to do, but I'm so much more conscious of it now. And like, even sitting in a chair, I'm sitting in this one and it's a little small for me because I'm a tall guy, but the shoulders and stuff. But a lot of the times I don't even sit back into chairs anymore. I just sit on the edge and I focus how I probably should have been doing my whole life, but on my alignment. And it's like, wow, I can notice, like, especially in my core where I had very poor core muscles. But it's just, it's kind of incredible to me that like, you just, like you were saying before, like it was, like the medical industry was so against it. It's like, well, like I was kind of like, well, like how come we weren't taught things like chiropractic and yoga and these, natural healing our whole lives? It's like, I guess it's part of our journey and our awakening process, right? Like you said, but I just find it so interesting. And now I think more so, especially, you mentioned, I didn't really even, when it was in terms of coming to an awakening process, I didn't really realize the importance that proper alignment of your spine, like you said, energy centers and stuff like that too, right? Because that's not taught. Like, you just think, well, okay, well, I'm going to have a straight spine, but nobody, like even chiropractors that I talked to, really didn't ever discuss energy centers and proper flow and things like that. So that's why when I met you, I was like, oh, I like Mike because he's kind of got this like holistic approach to it, right? And it's not just, you do other things at the wellness center as well, right?
I do. And you know what? I wasn't taught about, like you talked in school, we get a really good education. We get a really good anatomy education, but they really do focus on the physical. And when you're finding, like, the real benefit of health and healing is not just the physical body, but you have to focus on the mind and your thoughts and the emotions and the spirit. And so it's like a mind, body, spirit connection that you really need to balance and get that whole for us to heal properly. A lot of us are, the cause of all these misalignments in our body is stress and trauma. And there's, living on planet Earth, there's lots of opportunities to get physical stress and trauma. And some of it's a mental trauma, some of it's emotional trauma, a lot of it's childhood trauma. It's being stored in our body. It's blocking these energy centers. And when you start releasing it, then you go through a process of release. And then you have to actually, like, some of the trauma comes up and you got to deal with it. You got to like start being aware of it and thinking differently. And then you could start like holding your adjustments longer, and you can actually hold the energy flow at a higher level. But it's, I've actually been on a journey where I've learned a lot more outside of chiropractic college than I did in chiropractic college, even though you got a fabulous education on par with your medical doctors, and even better in some of the areas like anatomy and neuroanatomy and things like that. So, as I was studying chiropractic, I also was studying Eastern medicine. So did a lot of, Western medicine in the chiropractic college, but I was studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, and looking at the meridians, and then looking at, qi and qi gong and energy systems like that. And then more recently, I've gotten into more energy healing itself, all the different techniques of energy healing. I've been doing lots of work with yoga. Like, I know you like yoga. My favorite yoga is like Kundalini yoga, which is all about moving energy through the body and breath work and these type of things. So you start learning, like, really the tools to start optimizing the energy flow in your body. And that's when your body really heals at a higher level.
Yeah, exactly. And, you mentioned, happy you mentioned it, because I was kind of slipped my mind, but I wanted to talk about that, was the breath work and the healing. And, I started doing yoga and it was very introductory because, I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, like back in high school, like guys weren't doing yoga, like it just wasn't, let's be honest. So when I did the yoga with Adrian, it was very focused on the physical, and I didn't realize how important the breath work part of yoga was, right? And just over 3 years ago, I started doing Wim Hof as a recommendation from a buddy, because I'd heard of them here and there, and somebody's like, yeah, you gotta try it. My buddy Jeff is like, you gotta try it, this and that. And I've been doing the hot shower and cold rinse and stuff. And I thought, I just didn't ever realize how important my breath was. Like, I smoked cigarettes up until last year, and like Wim Hof was huge in helping me quit smoking, because it was a massive thing. And like, that is the breath of life. Like, our breath is the number one thing. And so how would you with your clients, do you get them doing breath work, or do you kind of just get them in for chiropractic and then do like a full synopsis analysis and kind of you take it from there?
So, most people, they come to me with their challenges, and I usually, the gateway is chiropractic. So that kind of gets them in the door. And then I will do the analysis. I'll do kind of a health history, but I do, when I adjust people, I'll get them to sit up, and I'll do some postural work, and I'll do what they call complete cellular mind-body alignment, where I'm actually holding a position on their forehead, connecting from their forehead through their pineal gland to their occiput. And I'm going to get them to do three deep breaths. As they breathe in, they're bringing up the shoulders, bringing their back, and I'm doing some realignment with their head, getting it over the shoulder. But I'm also holding an energy pattern of complete cellular mind-body alignment. There was a doctor from Toronto, Dr. Sharon Forrest, that did this energy healing. So I trained in that, and so I added a little bit of everything when people come in, kind of what they're ready with.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, I can't wait to get started.
and the truth is, not everybody's ready to hear about it, so I don't even tell them exactly what I'm doing, but they can feel the changes in their body. Mm-hmm. And it is close enough to what they might experience at a chiropractic office, but my intent is different. When my intention is to do some complete cellular mind-body alignment, they're getting an energy healing along with the chiropractic alignment. And I'm also intending to activate their energy centers and all kinds of different things that they maybe didn't know they were coming in for, but that's why they came to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so was that, like you mentioned, when you were studying and you kind of, going to chiropractic college and going to university and getting the traditional stuff, but then you kind of did the Eastern stuff by yourself. Was there, and like you mentioned, it's awakening chiropractic. Did you have, would you say you had an awakening? Was it a gradual process, or was there a moment where you said, oh, or was it always just, you knew kind of like subconsciously that you were going to integrate chiropractic with these other things, or was it a kind of a steps along the journey?
I would say it is more like steps, because there's you plateau in this area, and then you hit jump up here, and then you jump up here, and you jump up here. And what I'm finding out is these steps never end. Like this awakening process, the more I learn about stuff, the more I realize there's so many things that I don't know. And this reality that we're living in is, it's more mysterious than I ever imagined, because you experience it very physically at one point, and then you realize that, wow, these physical things could be like hard atoms. The atom, the electrons are way out there, and then the nucleus is made of this proton neutron, but the whole thing is like 99.999 empty space. But you're finding out this reality is very pliable. It's not as solid as we think it is. And we can learn to start working with the pliability of this reality. And that's really where a lot of the true healing is as well. So this stuff is stuff they will not teach you in school, because you can't really do the experiments. Well, they are doing like consciousness experiments, double slit experiments. And but when you get into quantum physics, that's the spooky action at a distance that Einstein was talking about. Nobody can really understand it in the physical terms. It's kind of like this reality. You can't really describe it with words, but we do our best.
Yeah, I think like the first little intro to that I had was in university, and my intro to psych class with Dr. Persinger, and like he was like a very difficult teacher. Like he weeded out the students that didn't want to be there. So like nobody took his class as an elective if they were in psych, and I was like, I'm just taking it because I heard you're a good teacher. But we did some really cool things with like remote viewing, and he talked about all this stuff. And I've seen, he had this brain scanning thing. It was called the octopus, and he did some really interesting experiments. And even recently, a friend sent me, he's like, oh, is this the teacher you were talking about in university? And so they proved, I forget, so I guess he had two of those helmet things on. They had one guy in Canada and one guy in South America. And so they wanted to prove that they could, like the stimulus response or whatever you call it, in one, in the other, it's transmitted. And so I guess the brain scan thing that they had on the guy in South America, and they were meant to focus on each other and kind of like be connected in the, in the higher realms or whatever, if you will. And so they said that they shone a flashlight in the one person's eyes here in Canada, and the same part of the brain lit up and the guy down in South America. So, and I just thought that was interesting. And so I hadn't seen anything about Dr. Persinger in years, but I just always found him fascinating. And so like this guy in the video, he was like, he considered him one of like the awakened masters and helping get this kind of information out there, and so it's just really fascinating. And like you said, there is so much mystery, right, to what's going on and that we're not told about. And it's kind of, I think that like, in a way, it's kind of interesting because that what causes the awakening. If you were like born and you got the whole like, oh, this is exactly how it works, there wouldn't be the process of going through. It wouldn't be an adventure, right? So in a way, it's kind of an interesting journey to be on, and it's a journey of self-discovery a lot of the time, right? And when we see that a lot of these things, especially in the past 2 years, have been suppressed, it's like, wow, I'm happy that I'm connecting with people like you, because it gives hope to everybody else out there. Because for me, at least, it seemed like it was a pretty dark time, the past 2 years, and we're coming out of it now. And it's like people have like amnesia about it in a way. I think, like they forgot what went on, but we don't want to focus on it too much. But how was did you find that you had more people turning to chiropractic during the pandemic, or more people kind of like waking up than usual, or what would you say?
I would say the majority of my patients were, they're compliant Canadians that, when they say flatten the curve, everybody stays home, except me. I did not buy any of it. I could see exactly what they were doing, and I just said, to my staff and other people there, they're like, we're a little bit nervous about this thing. And I'm like, well, if you're nervous, that's fine. But I plan on staying open my regular hours. I was an essential service, so I was allowed to do that. And I just showed up every day, and I had people come in. I started, it wasn't as busy as usual, so I was able to, maybe cover off the front desk and do a few things. So I just had some great conversations with a few people. I just kind of feel out where they're at. But as it went on, the longer this goes on, the more you can see what's really going on, and it's waking more people up. The truth is, our world, this reality that we're in, and the world that we're living in, was on a path or a trajectory where it could not sustain itself for the next, short period of time, whether it's 20 years or 50 years. We would not be able to sustain that type of trajectory. So we needed something drastic to turn it around. And I think we did get a divine drastic intervention. And it's actually like working out very smoothly, as challenging as it can be for some people. When you have a bigger view of this perception, then you could actually put the meaning on it that you want. And I see it as a good thing. I think this is happening for all the right reasons. And it is exposing a lot of corruption. What you're seeing is a lot of the systems, pretty well all the systems that I was taught about in school, they're pretty well inverted. They mix in some truth, but there's a lot of inversion to control your thinking, and you got to regurgitate what they're telling you. And when you start thinking for yourself and doing some critical thinking, you can see through this stuff pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And like you said, like divine intervention, I love that saying, because like when it first happened, it was frustrating, because it was like, this is like, this is not because I was the same way as you. And like, I like literally, I was like, what? I was like, there's no deadly virus that's going to wipe us all out. Like, I was like it would have been too late. Like if there was an airborne virus, like it's like, it's not happening. And like, obviously I was, there wasn't a lot of people that I know that really shared that view in my immediate family, but it was like, I had the moments where I was like, am I being unreasonable? Am I missing something? But it was just something inside of me that always said, I was like, no, I know what's going on here, and it has nothing to do with, like but it was so, after getting over maybe like the first 6 months, 8 months to being frustrated with it, that's when people started coming together. That's when I started meeting people where like, people started saying, okay, enough's enough. Like, that's how I met Carl, because he saw me on somebody's show, on Nicholas Vignamin's show. Him and Jane, I think Jane watched it, and she reached out, or Carl reached out to me. And so that's how we met. So a lot of people that were awake, I say awake, but came together, and it was like, and I think that was a very divine intervention thing, because it allowed a lot of people that we didn't know, like you, if this hadn't happened, you and I might be talking right now, right?
Yeah, it's true. Like, I believe there's a bunch of souls that have come to the planet for this great awakening. And what we do is we can see through exactly what's happening. Like, it doesn't even faze me. I don't even doubt it. I can see it so clearly. But there's a bunch of other people that see it too. And you know what? We can all come together and we start like meeting, because I think we all need to be spread out a little bit too, to kind of maybe help wake a few more other people up. Our vibration, our frequency, our bandwidth is really what kind of influences other people around us. And what we end up doing is we resonate with other people that are like-minded, and we can actually bring our frequencies up together. And that's who you start hanging around. You got to hang around with people that bring your frequency up, not bring it down. Exactly.
And it's a good way to put it. And I've noticed that too. And I like what you said about being spread out too, because, a lot of people, people talk about like, oh, like we should start a conscious community and stuff. And I don't really prescribe to that. I think the whole point of this is to be spread out and to spread the vibe, because if you're all condensed in one area, the energy is unbalanced, right? So actually, it wasn't when this, like, I moved downtown into like, people were moving out of downtown, and something said, I came here and I was like, I'm not letting the city go like this. And I would go for walks, and it was really weird to be like walking around the city, Toronto, like how many millions of people, and it was like empty at the weird, like it's different. Like if you're walking at like 5 a.m., it's going to be empty, but like to be walking downtown on like an afternoon at like 5 p.m. and it was very eerie. But like you said, I would just go walk around and just keep the vibes high, and like, the business owners that were around, smiles and supporting the local things where I could, and that, because like there was people that you really notice it, like, because from moving up in Markham, where I lived in a subdivision, and like you just don't really notice, because everybody's just out in their yards kind of normally. But down in the major metropolises, man, you could really notice the difference of how it impacted it. Like the stores getting boarded up and hardly anybody in the streets. And actually it was kind of a blessing last year when we had that big snowstorm. I was so happy, because it forced everybody to get out of their houses to shovel the snow. And I was outside and I was like, man, I haven't seen this many people outside in a year. But yeah, so it's really interesting, the way that, like you said, I really like that it truly is divine intervention, so that all this could come to light. And I think that there's a lot of things that like people just, you're either it woke a lot of people up, but I think a lot of people I don't think as many people woke up as that. I think to me, it was like, well, everybody's going to see through it now. And a lot of people are just like still fast asleep, right? Well,
Mark, I think it was Mark Twain that said it's easier for people to get fooled than to admit that they were fooled. So, a lot of people that, maybe were fooled even a little bit in the beginning will be continue to like push the narrative and push it on everybody else around them, like to keep it going. Like, once you believe it, then you just want to pretend that it's true. It's like cognitive dissonance. They don't want to see the narrative change and thought that they got fooled in the beginning. But there's so many things I know I've been fooled for on different things for a long time, but I'm okay to be wrong. I'm okay, if, you know what, I used to believe that, but now that I critically think about it, I can see where this does not hold water. It's not true. And I'm finding that out about a lot of systems that are, part of this reality. And there's just so much more things going on that I've been fooled about that I'm okay with it.
And so what would you say, as, being doctor and doing chiropractic and all that stuff, how would you say, like, I know a big part of this that I realized is that the foods I was eating, I didn't really look too much at food until recently, and I've totally changed my diet. How's that been a big impact in your life? And do you discuss it with clients at all?
Well, these are all important issues, like the food that we eat, even if you include the water that, many people drink. There's a lot of toxicity in our food and water, things that we're consuming into our body. And it's just laced with chemicals, even something like, the water that comes out of your tap. In most areas, it's fluoridated. You put, fluorine, which is a neurotoxin, into your water. And what I found out is they used to use fluoride in concentration camps in Germany to help keep the prisoners docile. So it actually numbs their brain a little bit, and they're less, argumentative or less reactive. So that's kind of like what we want to see. The people that are kind of controlling the world want to see people more controllable, and they're using all these things to keep us dumbed down, and not, maybe looking for a savior, looking for the government to save us, and whatever they tell us to do, we're supposed to do that, or whatever science they come up with is supposed to be the right science. But anyways, our food and the way we're doing agriculture right now, the soil is depleted with minerals. It's pumped full of fertilizers that are toxic, and they're being sprayed with glyphosate, Roundup, a lot of genetically modified foods that are not good for us. They're genetically modifying things and not even telling us, and they think it's oh, that's still a normal, that's just wheat. It's not just wheat anymore. That wheat has been genetically modified and changed. That corn has been genetically modified and changed, and it has a different effect on our body. So it's hard to find even this is not even getting into the stuff that's processed and packaged into, this is the stuff you're picking fruits and vegetables off trees. You think, oh, that must be perfect, right? Because it's, grown by nature, and it's probably better than some of the other stuff. But when you start looking at all the chemicals they're putting in foods, I've actually been doing a lot more fasting, like intermittent fasting, and I've been doing some longer fasting. Fasting is probably the time when I get most clear. I can actually start burning off some of the fats and getting some of the toxicity out of my body. And then my mind gets more clear at that point. And that's when I even think better, think more awakened thoughts. And you can see the beauty in the world better when you're fasting and clearing some of the stuff, the toxicity out of your body.
Yeah, I agree. I've been doing intermittent fasting for about 5 years, and I started off just, okay, I'm going to just skip breakfast and this and that. And then I actually, so about 2 years ago, that really pushed me to go take it to the next level. I'd never done a multiple day fast or anything, but I read Wallace Wattles. He's the author of Think and Grow Rich, I think, or.
Well, that was Napoleon Hill, but
that's Napoleon Hill.
Wallace Wattles too.
So I'm trying to think of, I don't know why I read the book nonstop for a year. The Science of Getting Rich, maybe. Anyways, he has the Science of Eating Well and Fasting as well, and he talks all about intermittent fasting and how it's. He was talking about a bodybuilder back in the day in the early 1900s and how he would actually do multiple day fasts and things like that. And so that kind of encouraged me. I was like, okay, I'm going to try a 3 day. I still did fresh squeezed juice for 3 days, but I did a 3-day fast for the first time a couple of years ago. And I felt like I had so much energy. It just happened to be in the middle of winter. And I was like, it was like Murphy's Law, I'm like, all right, I'm going to, because when you go into this, you don't know, like, people say, well, you need to eat for energy and stuff like that. So I thought I was going to be super lethargic. I was like, I'm going to take it. It was the middle of winter. I'm like, I'm going to take it really easy. I was home alone. I was like, I don't have to. So I was like, if I'm super tired, I could just sleep all day. That wasn't the case. And we got hit with like crazy snowstorm. Like I had to shovel the driveway, like massive amounts, like 3 times within a 24-hour period. So I was like out there digging, and I was like, oh man, I don't think I'm going to make it through this fast. I'm going to need to eat because I'm exerting so much physical exercise. And no, I made it through that 3-day fast. And I think at the end of the 3rd day, I think the only reason I actually ate is because it was just the end of my fast, not because I was hungry. I didn't feel hungry at all. What was the longest fast you've done?
The longest, what I did, it was the same thing, probably the 2020. I was going to do an 8-day Breatharian course with Camille and Akai. So they were going to do it in Costa Rica. I was just going to do the online web version of it. And it's an 8-day fast. Basically, you start off, the first day is just juices. Second day, you go to water. Day 3, 4, 5 is dry fast. No water, no food. And I've never did a dry fast before. And I've done it probably now about 5 times since. Then after the 3 days of water, you actually, you go through a water ceremony, you start drinking little sips of water, you get the water back into your system, and then you go back to juices and things like that. So then you slowly get back to healthy food, so maybe some vegetables and fruits and stuff. But yeah, 8 days without food, I can do that easily now. And I'm very confident. When I did it, same thing, people in Costa Rica, they did not have anything else on their schedule except for, doing this fast, and they would do some breath work and some gentle movement. But I just stayed working every day, and I did my workouts. I was playing hockey, and I was still doing all my sports. And you know what? It didn't really bother me. And what I realized is it did bother a lot of people that were even on the course, like with the group. But a lot of it has to do with your consciousness and why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like I was starving myself. I was, doing a cleanse and I could get really clear. And I could feel my body burning, off fat. Maybe the first day of the dry fast, you felt a little thirsty, but after day 2, day 3, even at one time I did the 8-day, I felt good after 3 days. So I went for 4 days. So I went 96 hours without food or water. And
that's awesome. I've never done the dry fast. I'll have to try that.
Yeah, it's a big awakening. Like, it almost allows you to have this freedom from constantly eating food and drinking water. When you don't have a lot of food in your system, you don't need a lot of water to actually process all that stuff out of your body. And what we've realized too is our body is mainly water. We're like water beings, and all of our cells have all this water in it. So you're going to pull water out of your cells, and the water holds memory. And what sort of memories is in your body? There's lots of traumatic memories, man. There's things that you went through childhood that's imprinted in the memory of your water. And now you start clearing this stuff out, and you get rid of the old water, and you clear out these memories, and you start bringing in new water when you start drinking again. So I felt a lot lighter. And it's not just, the physical, but you're getting rid of some of this mental, emotional, spiritual baggage that has been stored in your body. And these are just, they just bring you to a whole other level of awakening, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm super interested. I'm gonna have to do that one now, because it's the next step. Because the thing for me, you mentioned water before too. I've been drinking distilled water now probably for about a decade. I think it was about 10 years ago, I got on, just looking at stuff, and I was like, yeah, about the fluoride in the water, and the fact that not even just only that, but at at the water treatment plants, they're adding things to water and I was like, how does adding water make it cleaner? I was like, so you're killing bacteria, but you're adding other stuff. Like it's not fresh water. So I made a decision. I did a lot of research. I probably did, a couple of weeks of just like, on the weekends, like nonstop research. And like, cause everybody that you ask, or if you ask the doctor at that time, oh, you can't drink distilled water. And I was like, well, I'm going to go with the distilled water instead of the tap water. And I've been drinking it, and I've so many people in my life that have gotten onto it because it's just like, I don't know. Do you drink distilled water at all?
I drank distilled water probably for 5 years, maybe 6.
Yeah.
And recently I've gone back to spring water. So I'll go out to a local spring and I'll collect my own water. And ideally I collect it in like glass jars.
Yeah.
And I find that is the most it's a better structure. Like it's the ideal structure for you to absorb it into your system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my favorite water, but I do have a reverse osmosis system in my house that, if I have a quick drink of water, or if I'm making, things cooking with it, I'll use the reverse osmosis water.
Yeah.
I also have a distiller in my house. So every once in a while I used to distill a gallon of water, but it's a great way to like pull out some toxins out of your body, because distilled water is so pure that it will pull out impurities out of your body, right?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that people were saying. Well, doctors are claiming that it sucks you of nutrients, and like what I read, it's like your body's not letting any of the good stuff go. It wants to get rid of the toxins, but it's holding on to the good stuff. So don't worry that it's not the distilled water is not sucking the nutrients out of your body, like the good stuff. So that's what a big like caution was when I was told people I was doing that. That's what everybody's big thing is like, oh, it drains your body of minerals or whatever. Like,
yeah, you know what? And that's what, when you look up distilled water online real quickly, there'll be warnings all over. That'll become some of the first searches that come up to warn you not to drink, distilled water. But don't believe everything that's online. What we're finding out in the last couple of years, there's a lot of like false information online, and a lot of good stuff is being censored. Mm-hmm. And so,
well, yeah,
even you have to do some critical thinking, and you know what? When you experience it too, your body is going to talk to you. It'll tell you what's when you're overdoing it too, right?
Yeah, because I like honestly that whole thing started because I was way overweight, like about, I guess probably 11, 12 years ago. I was way overweight, and I'm like, okay, I'm taking my health back. Like I drank too much, I smoked, and I was eating fast food because I was working a corporate job and had a 3-hour commute each day. Like, so I just, like all the reasons, like stress, I was just like, okay, and so I realized that I was not drinking enough water, because I was drinking milk, I was drinking pop, I was drinking coffee, I was drinking everything but water. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start drinking water. And then I was drinking tap water for like a month, and I was like, this is horrible. I'm like, I'm going to go back to the other things. Like, and so I was like, well, like, bottled water is okay, but like, and so I just started doing my research on the distilled water, and it was like no turning back. And once in a while I'll get mineral water or whatever. And it's like, it's not that big, but I didn't realize how much, like, I think I was dehydrated for most of my life. So just having good water, good clean water, was a massive improvement. And then doing the fast, where I read somewhere too, is that, I think it was in that book, The Science of Eating Well and Fasting too, is that his theory was that, like we're conditioned, or we were taught to believe that you have to eat to get energy, like eating food gives you energy, but that's not really the case. In a sense it is, but it's really more we eat to maintain the physical structure of our body, like the actual substance of our body. So he was saying that most people could probably survive on, like if you're a construction worker, maybe a diet of half, but for the average person, they could probably survive on 1/10 of the amount of food that we currently eat, like in a standard American diet or whatever. And I found that fascinating. So it caused me to naturally just start eating less and less and less. And like, so even after I come off the fast and stuff, and it's like, wow, like we're just, like I just ate way too much my whole life. Like it's crazy.
You know what? The truth of it, Rob, is we're programmed to eat, and it kind of is like built into us when we're even born. Our parents had that programming that we have to eat, get calories, and what ends up happening is we get reliant on food. Our body has an amazing system in it just like plants, they can take the sunlight and they can take, the minerals from the earth and water, and they can create energy. Basically, everything in this reality is energy. So some people can get energy from sun gazing. Some people can get energy from water, and they can get energy from earthing certain movements, but everything is energy. You could breathe in energy. So there's like breatharians that breathe in energy. Ultimately, when you go into these longer fasts, you start doing breath work very consciously. You start doing some sun gazing, you start doing some things like that, where you actually are now creating or activating that system in your body that can create energy out of thin air. And that's just like, all the energy on the plants, or all the energy that we get from the system we're in, comes from the sun and the plants. So the plants are making the energy for us. Maybe we're eating the plants, or maybe we're eating something else that eats the plants, but it's also directly coming from the sun. So the sun is really our friend too. And that's another thing that we've been taught to, like, don't go out in direct sunlight, don't, cover up, put some stuff on to block the sun, wear sunglasses and all these things. And you're not letting the sun in. And when you let the sun in, that's one of the most healthy things we can do for our body too.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like, for me, I was never a big sunblock wearer, and only because, when I was younger, I was just didn't care to wear it. And I was like, okay, I'll go in and out of the sun. But then there was a point in my life where I think the last time, it was years and years ago, like in my mid-20s, when I went to Cancun, because I was just like, okay, maybe it's a different kind of sun, and I wore sunscreen there. But I was like, no, near the end of it, I was like, I'm not wearing sunscreen. I'll just go in and out of the sun. Sure, like if you lay on the beach for 5 hours, you're going to get a sunburn, but if you do it consciously and say, like, I would go to the beach with one of my previous girlfriends, and she'd be like, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to sit in the shade for 20 minutes. She'd be like, why? And I'd be like, because I don't want to get a burn. And then like she'd get all upset because she'd get burnt. And then the next day, like I'd be like super tanned, I haven't spent that much time in the sun, but all of these things, right? Like, so yeah, when you're putting on sunblock, and like you said, putting on sunglasses, like you're literally depriving your body of energy, and people aren't taught these things. And some people I have a conversation with, and they just look at you like crazy, like, oh, why would doctors recommend it? Why does everybody on earth wear sunblock? Well, just because it's like it's the old saying, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? Like, it's like, but you said, go ahead.
I like what Tony Robbins says, or something. I think it was like, when everybody's running, the crowd is running that way, you're better off to like run the opposite way. You're going to do better.
Yeah, they say that's true for investing too, right? Like the stock markets and stuff, like so. But like there's so much stuff that we've covered. I found it interesting that you just said that you did the breatharian fast too. So I'm gonna have to look into that one, and maybe I'll get the link off you for the people who held it, because I was gonna do even just the next one for me, because I've done the 3-day fast a couple times, but I was like, okay, well, I guess the next one's like 5 days and then maybe 7 days, but I never really looked into actually doing a dry fast in there in that 3-day session, like you said, for 8 days. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the 8-day one, I find it's a really good period of time. You go through that process, because I think a lot of the actual breatharians, or people that are called product living, people, they were initiated with a 21-day basically no food process. And that I haven't worked my way up to that. I'm sure I could do it, but I just find in my lifestyle that when I do 8 days, I'll do that a couple times a year. And I feel really good doing the 8 days. It's a nice amount of time.
Yeah, well, you've inspired me to try it too. And you know what I found, that like, we were talking about, you said that it's very mental. It's so true, because you don't realize how much, like you said, we are programmed to eat and conditioned to eat. It's just a habit. There was like, I don't know how many times, at least 3 or 4 times when I'm doing my fast, and I know I'm fasting, but I just found myself staring into the fridge looking for something to eat. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I didn't go there with the intention that I'm like, oh, I'm going to break my fast. It's just like, it's such a habit, right? Like, I'm just like, it's mid-afternoon and I'm like looking for a snack in the fridge. And then I'm like, and I'm like, no, man, I'm on a fast. So it's like, so much of it is subconscious, right? Like the eating, it's like it's habitual, or it's stress related, or trauma related, or all these things of, you know, why we might eat. It can be, you know, eating can be addiction. You know, we were talking earlier about foods and stuff, and like some of the addictive things. Like a lot of the stuff that they call food, it's like I don't even think it should be able to be labeled food. Like it's almost like you know, like fast food. That's not food. You know, call it something else, because it's not food. You know, call it a treat. Call it a you know, it might as well be candy bars. A lot of the stuff that they say is food isn't really. You know.
Yeah, what you find out is like we're being poisoned from so many different angles, and if it wasn't for, you know, how amazing the human, you know, body is, and our consciousness is really trumping so much of this stuff, and that's the amazing thing, is that we can live in this toxicity. I think there is an agenda to like keep the population down and kill off a good number of us, but you know, we have this innate intelligence where we can just rise above all the different things that are bombarding us. And then when your consciousness gets higher too, you actually start changing your lifestyle. You just do better, right?
Yeah, it's like when you make all those little changes. Like for me, I tell people, you know, especially people that like, because I quit smoking, and I've done so. I say in order to completely change your life, you have to completely change your life. And the thing that for myself was growing up, like I felt like crap all the time. So when your baseline is crap, you don't know what feeling good actually feels like. So, you know, like if I'm eat unhealthy, I'm smoking cigarettes, so I'm eating fast food and like, you know, drinking and lots of other stresses. It's like, well, I tried quitting smoking, but I didn't feel that much, like I didn't feel better like from quitting smoking, because I had so much other crap still. So my baseline was still just feeling like crap. But when you cut out all that stuff, you start eating healthy, having better water, eating better foods, you realize how much a cigarette actually, like, holy crap. And so if there's no turning back, I found it, because when before that I was like, oh, you know, like maybe I just, you know, some of my family members smoke, so I'm like, oh, maybe I just smoke for life. But no, because you get to a point where it's like, no, I can't go back. Like your consciousness is raised, and it's like you're not, it's like, you know, for whatever the reason, when you get to that point, it's like you don't have to worry about falling off the wagon, because it's you just you're past it now, right?
Right. And you know what, you end up like, you know, better, so you do better. And then you're also like, you know, that you don't have to be so hard on yourself either. Like you don't have to be perfect, because we're not perfect. You know, if you do decide to, you know, have a drink or do something or whatever, like it's not the end of the world either. But you know what, your consciousness is at a certain level, and you just know, you know what, I'm just not interested in doing that anymore. So I'm still, you know, evolving through lots of these things, but I also realize that there's no mistakes. This life is like unfolding like perfectly. It's very, you know, imperfect, obviously, but that imperfectness is part of the perfection of why we're having this human experience, right?
Yeah, and you said it, experience. It's experiential existence, where you get to know, you get to try things, you get to see what works, what doesn't, and make adjustments along the way. And that's part of the beauty of it. And I think the unfolding of it, and when it's so, when you get those like, you know, to the next level of that conscious thinking, it's amazing, because there's certain things in your life. And I know that, you know, speaking with some people that are kind of going through, I'm helping them through some trauma stuff. And it's like, there's a certain time when you said, you talked about releasing trauma and stuff like that. There's certain things that happen in your life, and then it's like that trauma won't affect you again. When you overcome it and you work through it, it's like there's a day that it doesn't get your attention anymore. You might think about that experience, but it doesn't make you cry, or it doesn't make you go buy a bottle of booze, or it doesn't make you throw you into this turmoil for a day thinking about it. And why did I do that? So like you said, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. And that's a problem. I think that a lot of it is that we're way too hard on ourselves, but in the wrong ways, you know?
Yeah. We can, like, you know, take that trauma, and you can now look at it from a, you know, a more evolved conscious level and say, oh, I can understand, you know, why that person did that to me, because they had a trauma or they went through something and that was part of their reaction. And I can just understand that we're all like little babies or toddlers, you know, running around as children in this world, you know, doing the best we can to survive and cope. And there's going to be triggers and traumas and different things happen. And that's why we came down here, for us to play in this playground of trauma. You wouldn't want to have it too safe, because that would be way too boring. When we were at another level where we're all like one love and light being, you can't only stay in the love and light for so long. Now you got to come down here and experience the duality of planet Earth.
Yeah. That's like, there's probably be boring living in perfection after a few years. It's like, okay, let's start another game, or go to a different galaxy or a different planet and do something, like experience that, right? I guess that's how it works, right? So, well, Mike, I mean, we could probably keep going, but like we chatted about before, I'd love to have you on again so we can continue our conversation and dive deeper into some of these things. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you more. Is there anything, any parting words of wisdom you want to leave for the viewers?
Well, recently my parting words, often when I'm like kind of ending an interview, I always like to give everybody the peace sign and say, live an awakened life, everybody. So live the best awakened life you can. And everybody's going to keep evolving on that journey of waking up, and then just do your best every day to live that. So live an awakened life. And thanks again, Rob. It'll be my pleasure to come back on again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate it. Take care, my friend.
Take care, Rob.